What's up everybody? In this video I'm going to work on fixing my garage door. As you can see on this right hand side here, there's a gap between the door and the floor, and over here there's no gap. And so over time this door is starting to get crooked. And from what I understand, the drum up there that holds the cable is starting to slip, and so it allows the door to come down further than this side. And so I'm going to work on fixing that, and I'm going to take you along. It's a pretty simple fix, and these are the tools I'm going to use. These are winding bars for the torsion springs, and then this is a 7/16 wrench. The nuts on them are square nuts, but the 7/16 socket side will fit over the square nuts and work. I'm also going to use a set of safety glasses, and I'm going to have a ladder to get to what I need to get to. The first thing that I'm going to do, just for some additional safety, is I'm going to unplug the garage door opener. This will just ensure that if somebody comes home and presses a button, the garage door opener doesn't start moving on its own. The second thing that I'm going to do, again for safety, I'm going to pull down the disconnect. As you can see, there was a ton of tension behind that. This is going to be a good fix. Next, I'm going to adjust the spring by about a quarter of a turn. I'm going to use one of the winding bars here and put it into place to hold it. Then I'm going to loosen the set screws here. Alright, so there's tension. I'm going to hold it in place. Then I'm going to use the winding bars to add a little bit of additional tension. There you go. Now that I've added about a quarter of a turn, I'm going to tighten back up my set screws. I'm going to leave that just like so. The next thing I'm going to do is tighten down this drum, because this is the one that's slipping. I'm going to tighten it down so that it won't slip anymore. Now that I've tightened down this side here, I'm going to work on loosening the other side so that I can readjust the tension of that cable, and then I'll tighten it back down.
So it was at this moment that when I looked at the cable that I was about to work on, I could see that it was frayed and starting to come apart. I sort of stopped recording at this point, or at least stopped making the video, because I wasn't exactly sure what the next step was. I knew I had to order a new part, and that this project just became a little bit more complicated. I decided that what I would do in the meantime, because the cable wasn't broken, was that I was going to continue with the adjustment of the door and then order the new cables and then either make a new video or include that in this video. And so I decided to include that in this video, and so you'll see the frayed cables shortly after I finish fixing this door. So what I'm doing here is I am loosening the drum screws that hold the drum in place. And you'll see that as I start to loosen it some more, the door will actually start to drop down. Once the door has fully dropped down, I use my hand to kind of rewind the drum so that the cable is just slightly taut. And then I tighten the screws back up to hold the drum in place. When tightening the drum screws, I'm not wrenching them down really hard. I'm tightening them to the point where they touch the rod, and then it's like a quarter or a little over a quarter turn more, just to snug it down. You don't want to really dent the rod. Once I finished tightening the drum down, I removed the winding bar that was propped up against the wall that I did in one of the initial steps. Then, because I had already disconnected the door from the chain or the drive, I then lifted the door manually by hand to make sure that it ran on the tracks fine and opened and closed. And then when the door closed down finally, I just ensured that the gap was no longer there. After that, I plugged the garage door back in, and then I used the garage door to open and close the door. And it worked fine, and the door wasn't crooked anymore.
All right, I wanted to show what I saw for the cable. So this is the cable. This is down low by the door where you can see it's pretty frayed up down there. And then along the top, you can see that it's starting to come loose. I don't know if it's easy to tell, but you can see it's starting to come loose up top there as well. And then as you get closer to the drum, it's pretty bad. So I'm gonna work on replacing it now. I'll show you what we're doing. So I've already unplugged the garage door opener and I pulled the manual latch so that the garage door opener won't be able to open the door on its own. The next step is I'm going to put a little tension on the cable and then I'm going to use the bar to kind of lock it in place. That way the drum won't have any tension behind it and this bar will be locking it in place. Alright, so this bar is holding the tension off. Now this cable's loose, now I can work on it. So the next step is going to be removing the cable from the door. I'm going to show you down where it connects to the bottom of the door. There's a loop at the bottom and it loops over this little stud, I guess. I need to remove it from there and then I'll be able to unwind it from the drum. So when the garage door was on the ground, I really didn't have access to this. And so I think what I'm going to do is I raise the garage door up here. I'm going to take the cotter pin off and then I'm going to put it back in place like kind of loosely just to make sure that the cable doesn't come off of the end here as I'm bringing the door back down because that would be a big problem. Alright, so this is what I did. I took the cotter pin out and then I flipped it upside down and I put it back in the hole. And so the purpose is that I'm actually going to bring the door back down and work on it while the door is down, just like I had set up before. But the pin is there really just for that one time as I bring this door down. I'm going to do it by hand and I'm going to do it very slowly and carefully. And then that way when I'm done, I'll probably put it back in this position to bring it back up and then I'll reset the cotter pin back to the way that it was so that it's locked in safely. Alright, so I lowered the garage door very carefully and then once it was down, I locked it back in place with the winding bar. And so now I'm going to work on, I'll pull the cotter pin out, pull the cable out, and then we'll replace the cable. The next thing that I need to do is I'm going to loosen these drum screws and then I'm going to take the cable off of the drum. So I'm going to note the direction that the cable gets installed. So when I uninstall, it's coming up and going over towards the garage door. So once you get the cable off of the drum, I just laid it out side by side next to the new cable just to confirm that I have the right length. The reason being is I actually had the wrong length when I ordered the first cable because my garage door, while it's the standard 7-foot height, it raises it up higher because I have a higher ceiling. I ended up having to order a custom cable. For the custom cable, I just measured the length of it, of the one that I took off, and then just told them the length, and they cut it, to size. So installation is just the reverse of what I did before. I'm going to feed the loop end down back through by the garage door. It goes behind the brackets. When you take out the original cable, you just want to make note of the path that it takes. So now that I've fed it down through, I'm going to go reconnect the loop at the bottom so that it gives me a little tension when I connect it to the drum. So I've tried to zoom in so you get a view of what I'm doing here. I hope it's not too blurry. But the opposite end of the cable has a little lock in place. It loops up over the back, and then it locks in on the little groove here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to wind the cable up, following the groove. It doesn't have to be super tight because the door has tension on it. And so then now that I have the door similar to before, now that I have the drum tight, it doesn't need to be super tight because then you start to draw and you start to lift the door. And I'm in the grooves. I'm gonna tighten down my set screws here. It might stretch a little over time. We'll have to keep an eye on the door. So after I finished tightening the drum down, I went and I checked down at the loop at the bottom just to make sure that everything was still in place and not, half pulled off. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to release the tension on the spring, and then we're going to manually pull the door up so that I can put the cotter pin back in or secure the cotter pin. I replaced the cotter pin with the new cotter pin and then bent it, and then I cut one end short because it actually was rubbing up against the frame a little bit. So this is what it looks like. So you may end up having to readjust the door. With the new longer cable, it was, even though I tried to tighten it to the right tightness, it still lifted the door up again. So I just followed the same procedure to really just put some tension on this side of the cable and then loosen this drum over here so that it was tight, so that it was level, and then I tightened it down, and the door was looking good. Now I'm going to try and power it up and down. But first I got to plug it in. So that was it. It turned out to be a little bit bigger of a project than I was expecting, but not too bad. That initial click when the door came on was really just the driver catching up onto the latch again. So ultimately, it's quiet and my cable looks good. And so I hope you enjoy the content. If you like it, please like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you very much.